Hi, everybody. Karen Roby here for ZDNet. Talking with Danny Palmer today about your cover story, Danny. This is really an informative piece about a firsthand account of when you were notified potentially that some criminal activity was going on regarding your own bank account. Let's just start with the first alert you received, and then we'll talk from there about what you did with it.
It was quite bizarre. I was sitting on the sofa earlier this year and I got a text message from my bank saying, we're about to send you a text message you'll need to respond to. I was like, oh, this is weird. So then the next one came through and said, did you use your bank card here just now? Which I looked up the location and it was in Suriname in South America. And considering I was sitting in London and obviously had not tried to use my card in South America at that moment in time, it was someone obviously trying to use my bank details across the other side of the world, something like 5,000 miles away from where I was. The bank fortunately realized this was potentially fraudulent and blocked the transaction. But I then called my bank who confirmed, yes, this was someone trying to use my card. Cancelled my card, and it was a bit annoying, obviously, it happening because on a personal basis, it meant I didn't have a card or any way of withdrawing money really for about a week until my new card came. But it's also led me down this pathway. In my position as a reporter, I was able to try and examine what happened and how it happened, and it was an interesting journey.
Yeah, so Danny, talk a little bit about how, through your research, what did you figure out? How did this happen?
There's a few different theories as to how it could have occurred. One of them is that my card was, I'd used it in an ATM machine and someone had managed to install something within the ATM to steal the data and take my PIN number and card details to use for their own benefits. After all, ATMs are just computers. They, your Windows systems that you and I use at home. Often these are Windows systems which are old. We're talking Windows XP even. So they're old, often aren't patched, and so they're vulnerable to potentially being attacked in this way. Another way it could have happened, which seems the most likely scenario, is that point of sale malware. Somewhere along the line, I made a transaction, be it at a store, because this happened towards the start of this year before everything happened in the world, or I used it online and somehow attackers managed to infiltrate the system and steal the information there. And it's one of those things where I'm obviously as careful as I can be, especially with the beat I report on, as to what I do online, but it could happen to anyone in this way. What's really interesting is trying to examine how the details got to the other side of the world. And I've spoken to a number of researchers who have managed to potentially identify my personal details up for sale on underground forums, which is weird and scary because we all know that our personal detail is out there. I know that I've had usernames and passwords leaked in data breaches, but seeing that potentially my name and my bank card was there for sale for $25 on underground forum was kind of scary. Thankfully, in this case, the details don't appear to have contained more than that. That doesn't include my date of birth or my home address. But it was just really worrying at the time and just quite eye-opening. And what's really interesting as well is that analysing how the transaction was made, it appears that the people who bought my credit card information, because it's unlikely that's the people who stole my information or other people trying to use it, that seems to have been used with a cloned card. So someone has used products to build their own credit card, really, using my legitimate details. And it's not really that hard to do that. You just need a as researchers told me, you just need plastic, as you have for any organization uses for an ID card. You use an embosser to print in the details like you have on a legitimate bank card, and then you on the magnetic stripe you transfer the information necessary there. And ultimately, a gas station or a small store in Suriname is probably not going to be highly aware of what UK bank cards look like in the first place. So it could have been, it might not even look like what my bank card really looks like, but they went there to do this, to probably essentially test out if the account was legit, which unfortunately for me, it was, because it was my account. But fortunately for me, my bank managed to block this transaction from happening, which is definitely a relief. And as part of the feature, I spoke to one of the UK's leading banks about how they detect this sort of activity, because they sort of just imagine how many millions, probably billions of transactions happen every single day. And the bank has to have analyze all this information to determine what is legitimate. It's quite interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I got the same message saying, was this you trying to make this transaction? In this case, it was me doing it. So, because I had a slight thought of, oh no, not again. But it just, blocked just legitimately what I was trying to purchase at that time. But it's just been a fascinating journey looking into all of this. And I don't know, the individual, I don't know who was going to be using my details all the way in Suriname, South America. But it just shows that the cyber criminal industry, for want of a better term, is truly global, that my details were stolen likely here in London, and someone's tried to use them 5,000 miles away in South America. I mean, I've never even been to South America. So it's just really fascinating. It was really interesting trying to chase this trail down.
Yeah, the crazy thing, Danny, of course, is that you talk about and you write about cybersecurity nearly every day, as that is your main focus as a technology writer. So it's crazy that you became the subject of the story. So in closing here, what are some of the tidbits of information that you can pass on to people, should they find themselves in a position similar to you here?
As you say, this could happen to anyone. During my research into this, I spoke to several security professionals who each said, yes, this has happened to me. In one instance, one had attackers tried to buy £14,000 worth of wine using their details, which is just insane. And yeah, ultimately, this can happen to anyone, and cyber criminals will try and keep going for this because it's easy money for them. There are things that you can do to try and protect yourself. I mean, some of the simple things like do be careful about where you buy things from. For example, there's been a lot of stories over the last few months about coronavirus scams, people and websites claiming that they have cures or equipment, that sort of thing. Obviously, there's no cure yet, and people were desperate to try and get these items, but in many cases, they're just being sent, hey, buy this, by a phishing email to a website they may have never, ever heard of before. So one thing you can do is try to use trusted retailers, although that's not necessarily going to keep you safe, because we've seen the amount of data breaches that happen means that it's happening all the time. But at least if it's with a legitimate retailer, they will actually tell you when there's been a data breach. If it's an illegitimate one or a scam site, they're just going to take your money and run. And I guess ultimately just be mindful about purchases you're making, and check your bank statements regularly to check what happened. I mean, in this instance, I'm glad my bank was able to determine this was fraudulent, because about 6 or 7 years ago, I had an incident where my card details appeared in, I think it was Florida on this occasion. But when this happened, I only found it out myself because I happened to be checking my bank details, and it said, "Oh, you tried to, pending transaction, pizza restaurant in Florida," which I hadn't been to, which just goes to show that at least banks are developing this technology, and they were able to detect in this instance with the Suriname case that something was wrong potentially within 30 seconds of a criminal trying to make that transaction, which ultimately saved me from having my bank details stolen, which I don't imagine would have been very good for me in any stretch of the imagination. It was frustrating having to change my bank details, but ultimately that's better than having lost all the money I have in my accounts or to them, or criminals buying things as me, because you hear lots of cases where this can go on for a long time without people noticing, who then get their credit records destroyed because cybercriminals have been buying various luxury goods on credit from these people. So I guess if there's a message here that yes, this can happen to anyone, but there are some things you can do to help yourself stay safe online. And the good thing is that security companies and banks are improving how they track this activity. So often now when it does happen, in this case, it's going to be blocked, which is a good thing for us as consumers and a bad thing for cyber criminals.
Yeah, it's really crazy, Danny, how you've become the subject of this story. Again, a subject that you write about so much with cybersecurity. Well, for much more on what you need to know to keep yourself safe, make sure you check out ZDNet and Danny's full article there. Thanks for watching.